It's been over 10 years since the insurgency broke out in the country's northeast. While casualty figures continue to rise, the damage done on infrastructure appears very daunting. In this next report, our correspondent Chris Illiams takes a look at the costs of the insurgency to the region.
Death, displacement, destruction, annihilation, all summarize the effect of insurgency in the northeast region of Nigeria. The region, which is made up of 6 states, Adamawa, Bauchi, Borno, Gombe, Taraba and Yobe, occupies a land area covering 280,419 square kilometers, 1/3 of the country's total land mass. Since Boko Haram first struck in July 2009, it's been tales of sorrow and harvest of tears in Borno, Adamawa and Yobe states, the epicenter of the mindless attacks.
Fits the bill.
The activities of the sect, which escalated by 2014, seriously impacted both economic and social infrastructure. 2 million people are said to have been displaced. A number of deaths is put at over 20,000.
We know, like in Yobe State, there are schools and institutions of government that have been attacked. We know of Mamudo, where a number of students were killed in their dormitories. We know of College of Agriculture.
According to the Northeast Nigeria Recovery Peace Building Assessment of 2016, the impact of the terrorist act was put at $9 billion, with Borno State taking the lion's share with a loss of $5.9 billion. The assessment also shows that 30% of houses in the state were destroyed, 5,335 classrooms torched, 201 healthcare centers, 1,630 water sources, 665 municipal buildings, 726 substations were also affected.
Nobody in his own right senses will take money and say he's going to the Northeast to invest today, because money is a fearful commodity. It does not go to where it will suffer.
4 years after that assessment, the region is still counting the cost.
Sons, daughters who saw their parents executed before them. This kind of memories, only follow people to the grave. So this is one of the aspects of the war that I am deeply concerned about.
While various efforts by the government to bring the onslaughts under control continues, it is important to note that the more the war lingers, the higher the cost to bear. Chris Illiams, Channels Television News.
Let's get further insight into some of the recent challenges in the fight against insurgency in the country. And we are now being joined by Mr. Bulama Bukachi, a conflict and security analyst. I want to thank you so much indeed for joining us. From London, of course. This war has been on for over 10 years, we know. There's been various approaches by different governments. Now, a government from the region has added a new dimension to that debate by calling for the recruitment of at least 100,000 soldiers to execute that war. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think obviously Boko Haram remains an imminent threat, not only in Nigeria, but also Niger, Cameroon, and Chad. They have continued to kill Nigerian soldiers and soldiers across the region, but also unleashing indiscriminate, horrific violence against civilians who are non-combatants. And I think there is need to revamp military efforts and security and intelligence efforts. But I think 100,000 soldiers is too big a number. I say that not because the war is not serious, but because even the number of the insurgents by all the estimates we have is not more than 6,000 to 7,000. So if you are fighting 6,000 to 7,000 people, of course they have an experience of a decade of war, but they don't have military training. I wouldn't think up to 100,000 soldiers will be needed, but I fully support the call for more military, but also more equipment and welfare for the soldiers on ground.
But the argument, if you remember, is that the population such as we have in Nigeria, hitting almost 200 million people, will call for a stronger military formation and military numbers. So since you disagree, what will be the answers then? What will be the solutions you're providing?
Yeah, so I don't disagree. I think what I said is 100,000 is too big a number, but I think the military effort should be revamped. It should be stepped up. And in terms of the recent upsurge in the insurgency, there are several factors, and I think we need to look at each of the factors and try to address them. For example, there was recently a tactical change in the Nigerian military's tactic of fighting the war. We know that in the past there were soldiers in villages and communities in the front line. But in 2019, by data from the Council on Foreign Relations and others, about 800 soldiers were killed. And most of them were killed in the first half of 2019. And the Nigerian military responded by what they called the super camp strategy. By the super camp strategy, they withdrew soldiers from frontline communities and villages and consolidated them in what they called super camp. And the intention was to reduce the number of military fatalities. And I think that strategy has worked in the sense that it has reduced the number of soldiers being killed by Boko Haram.
Okay,
However,
if I may come in here, if that worked then, what are we missing now?
What we are missing now, what I am saying is, what we need to do is to protect those villages, because the strategy they just adopted has exposed villages and left them unprotected. And that's why we have seen upsurge in Boko Haram attacks. Secondly, we know that this January, Chadian soldiers, about 1,200 of them that were fighting on Nigerian soil had been withdrawn. And the Chadian government said they withdrew the soldiers because their mission has ended. And I think the Nigerian government should work with the Chadian government to renew their mission and bring them back, because Chadian soldiers, because of their experience of conflict in their own country, have been very effective in fighting Boko Haram. And I think they should come back to Nigerian soldiers. They should come back to Nigerian soil and continue fighting together with the Nigerian army. I think that would reduce the number of fatalities and attacks we see of civilians now.
That's a good place to let it rest. I most sincerely thank you so much indeed, Mr. Bulama Bukati, a conflict and security analyst. Thank you for talking to us here on the News at 10.
Thank you for having me.